Hola, IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling on this Thursday afternoon / evening. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm John Stiers. It's we in, we out Thursday. We've got a lot in rapid fire as well. Marcus Freeman made the rounds at ESPN this afternoon, and I've spent the better part of the last hour and a half or so transcribing some of that. We'll have some of it up at Irish Breakdown here very shortly. We'll play some of it as well in rapid fire. So you got that to look forward to. How much are you looking forward to that, Jesse, since you missed it?
I am just over the moon.
Edge of your seat, rocking and ready to go.
I did some homework, though. I listened to, I don't know if you knew this, but Jim Tressel has a podcast, and I watched his Marcus Freeman interview from the other day.
I listened to about half of it yesterday. They were slowly going through.
Yeah, it was very slow. I do agree.
Freeman's career. Yeah, a lot of setup from Jim.
I actually
Tressel.
had to kind of pause, stop it for a little bit, because it was at times all right, come on, this is
right.
Let's speed this thing up a little bit.
And there's actually something from that came up on ESPN today that'll be some part of what we play in rapid fire as well. So you got that going for you.
What's
Andre likes your hat. He wants to know where you got it.
Thanks, Andre. To be honest with you, I don't know where I found this one.
Is that blue? I can't.
Yeah, navy blue with just the gold Indy on the front of it.
You're getting a little backlight, so I couldn't tell if it was like a like a forest green or
that's the color of my
green,
shirt.
Right? Yeah,
my shirt is like a forest green, and then it's supposed to be like a navy blue hat. So I went with the nice Notre Dame green and blue.
DK likes your shirt.
Thanks. Everyone's being so nice today. I've had a really crappy 24 hours, but it's okay.
All right. Well, we'll have to get all the details on that in a little bit. Hit that like button if you would as you filter into the show tonight. It greatly, 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 greatly helps us. Greatly. Let's get into some of these questions submitted on the new Champions Lounge. I've been saying just the Champions Lounge because I assume that all of our subscribers know that the new Champions Lounge is where things are supposed to get posted now on our message board. But apparently some people still go to the old Champions Lounge. So new Champions Lounge is where you can find the thread. And of course, if you didn't get a question in the Champions Lounge, you can always throw us a super chat in this show. We'll put that up there as well. Joe wants to know, we in, we out. Preseason AP poll will have Notre Dame the highest it has ever been in the Marcus Freeman era. Now, I should say the Fighting Irish were ranked number 5 in the preseason poll in Marcus Freeman's first season. So the number to beat is 5. Do you buy or are you in or you out on that, Jesse?
I'm going to say I'm out on that. I think they're a top 10, 12 team preseason. But as we'll get into in rapid fire, I think there is a big question mark that is holding people back at the national level.
Ooh, okay. John says he's out. DJ says he's out. I'm out as well because they're going to be in the top 10, but they will not be in the top 5. They're, you're looking at basically Texas will be there, Alabama will be there, Georgia's going to be there. A lot of people like Ole Miss, a lot of people like Oregon, Ohio State, all the regulars. People are back high and heavy a lot on Clemson as well. Sloppy Joe says, what's their rank? Well, we haven't got the preseason polls yet. So So I'm gonna go out on the highest they've ever been in the Freeman era, just because they were number 5 2 years ago, and they're not going to top that this year in the preseason poll. He also says Notre Dame will break some kind of record this season with both offense and defense. In or out on that?
I would say out on that. I think that they will offensively. I don't know about defensively, and I don't know enough about what records kind of stand. But I will say offensively, I know they had the highest points per game, or like the most points they've scored last season. I think they're going to break that again this season.
I do too. I definitely think they will break the scoring record. They were 39.2 points a game last year. I think they'll top 40 points a game this season. Defensively, I mean, because he's saying some kind of record, I'm going to go in on that. I don't know necessarily that it will be scoring, just because it was so good last year at 15.9 points a game. But again, like when you look at the schedule they're going to face, you could easily see them topping that. So it might not necessarily be scoring, but I see them, like, from an offensive standpoint, I do think they'll break that scoring record. Defensive standpoint, they'll break some kind of record. What it is, not quite sure yet. From DK, we in, we out. A freshman running back will exceed Chris Tyree's 2020 freshman year. 73 attempts, 496 yards, 6.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. In or out on that one?
I would say in on that one. I think, are we who are we considering a freshman running back in this scenario?
I mean, basically, Aeneas Williams. I'm trying to think.
Do we count Love?
Kedron Young. I couldn't think of his name there for a second. No, Love played last year. He's not a freshman. So,
is he a redshirt freshman?
No, he played too much last year.
What about, okay, here, I found it. Jeremiah Love is considered a sophomore. Jadarian Price is a redshirt sophomore.
Love played in every game last year. So
it's either Young or Williams. I'm going to say we out. I don't think that that's going to get broken by either of these freshmen. I think there's just too much in front of them with Price and Love.
Yeah, see, and like I'm looking, Jabron Payne had 45 carries last year. Of course, he was more short yardage type guy. But then I look at Jadarian Price, 47 carries, 284 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was basically the number 3 back behind Love and Estime last season. So I think that is maybe the ballpark for one of those other 2 backs, since there won't be a Jabron Payne this season. So I think 73 attempts and 496 yards is just a non-starter for me for one of those freshmen. I think, they'll likely, both of them will get some mop-up duty type stuff, again, against the schedule that they're going to face this year, but I don't see them getting up there around 500 yards and 73 attempts. So I've got to be out on that one. Had some guys going back and forth on a couple of these. Okay. Hesburgh Mafia, in or out on Dante Moore transferring again this year? I mean, he committed, went to UCLA. Now he's at Oregon. He's most likely going to sit behind Dylan Gabriel. So do you think Dante Moore bounces yet again, Jess?
I'm going to say no. I think Gabriel, this will be his last season as a college quarterback. So I do think Moore will get his opportunity next year, and I think Oregon is the best fit ultimately. I think if that's, the style of quarterback that he is, I think he's just got to be patient this last season and just kind of accept that you're going to be in a role where you have to kind of learn from someone who's ultimately better than you. But Oregon is the fit for him.
No, it's absolutely a fit, and that's why I'm out as well. And, it's like, you're exactly right the way you said it. Like, sit behind Dylan Gabriel for a year. If something happens to Gabriel, maybe he ends up being the guy as the number 2. But I don't think he's going to bounce again this year. Unless he were to slip to, 3rd on the depth chart or something like that. I don't think he's going to transfer once again. Keon Keeley will have a breakout year for Alabama. In or out on that? He has been, both of these guys, of course, who ultimately decided not to come to Notre Dame. Keeley has not emerged so far in his first couple years at Alabama. Do you think he has a breakout this year?
Yeah, I mean, just by playing, maybe odds or probability on this one, he did not see any action last year. So, to me, getting some sort of playing time and having an impact would be considered a breakout season this season. So I'm going to be in on that just because of having no production last season to probably having, some sort of role on the defense this season.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go just any kind of role, basically any kind of significant action out there and call that a breakout, I'll have to go in on it as well. I mean, the guy is talented. We know he's talented. That's part of why he ended up at Alabama, or at least why Alabama coveted him, maybe a little bit more so than Notre Dame even. So, yeah, I'll go with a breakout for him. I'll go in on that. How about the third one? Tobias Merriweather will have a better year than Rico Flores and Braylon James at their new schools.
I think he'll do better than Braylon James. He went to TCU. Rico Flores went to UCLA. Where did Tobias go? Another California school.
Cal Golden
Cal.
Bear. Yep.
I'm going to say he'll have a better year than Braylon, but I don't think he's going to have a better year than Rico Flores. I think Rico Flores will be the best out of those three.
I'm in on that as well. After Flores had the kind of year that he had last year, Braylon James was still trying to get things figured out last year, and it never really happened for him. So, yeah, look, we all thought that Tobias Merriweather was going to have this massive season last year, and it never happened. And, everyone was itching for him as a true freshman, and we got it in flashes. And obviously, you get the one catch and the touchdown and all that kind of stuff. There's a ton of potential there, but I'm not going to go better than Rico Flores because they both played in the same offense last year, and Flores was at
better,
least more productive. Yeah, looked more polished than
I mean, to
Flores.
me, this comes down to Rico Flores just looks more confident, and maybe that's Tobias never found his footing at Notre Dame, and maybe the change of scenery will help him at Cal, but it just seemed like Rico was more confident in himself, and he was just kind of hungrier overall, just more aggressive about, playing the position, really kind of battling up and down the depth chart. So I just think honestly, I just think Rico's going to work harder at point blank.
Yeah, they should all have opportunities, a ton of opportunities this year. Tobias, to me, just looked like a guy who had a ton of talent and never necessarily had to push himself that hard. And he's not the first one that we've seen this from, especially at the wide receiver position. Like, you got to push yourself farther. And I don't think that we saw that in his time at Notre Dame. DK Flores was better than the great one. Slinging it out there, right at Salty, throwing daggers.
Fighting words.
From Domer Grizz, Jayden Harrison will play meaningful snaps at wide receiver this year. We in or we out?
I mean, technically, he's going to be behind Greathouse and Faison. Listen, I think he'll play meaningful snaps, as in he'll get into the rotation. I think Mike Denbrock's a smart enough offensive coordinator that he's going to utilize kind of everyone on that wide receiver depth chart. I think there's going to be packages that involve Jayden Harrison, but I don't think by any means he's going to be, a premier wide receiver or a guy that really maybe even gets over 400 yards. But again, I think he's not that he's just out there to be a decoy, but I think you can use him in certain packages, kind of like speed packages, right? Or like we've talked about, like the potential of Notre Dame coming out in like a diamond or a quad, which is like one more than trips. You know what I mean? So like having him in maybe like that quad or diamond look, or you know what I mean? I just think he's more so on the field to kind of put pressure on the secondary and maybe he gets open, or maybe that allows, other things to open up behind him type situation. But I don't see him obviously being like a premier wide receiver in this offense, but I do think he'll have some sort of, play sets that involve him.
To get meaningful snaps, this is how I'm defining it. He's got to be among that top 6, the 6-man wide receiver rotation that Mike Brown talked about in the spring. And I just don't see that for him. I agree with what you're saying. Like, he'll see snaps. He'll be out there, I would say at best, like 25%, in a game. So I don't consider that meaningful. Like, you look at Marshall last year, where he was one of the main guys. He only had 28 catches, a little over 400 yards as one of the main guys.
I mean, really what this comes down to, if they're running a 6-man rotation at the wide receiver group, is, Jayden Thomas, Chris Mitchell, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Bo Collins. That's 5 already.
Right.
The 6th spot is going to be between Deion Colsey, Micah Gilbert, KK Smith, and Jayden Harrison.
Right.
That's a lot of people.
And everyone's got their favorite, and not all of them are going to be in that mix.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Ted.
Out of Mike Brown. Oh, Ted Power's back. Ted Power. Ted, just pump the brakes, man. You don't start because,
Ted, you need to learn something called a compliment sandwich. You always got to you got to ease people in.
There you go.
Say something nice,
That's right.
say whatever mean stuff you have, and then follow it up with something nice again. You just spew out the mean stuff.
Literally, Ted. I know you were, kind of put on probation a little bit last week. Wasn't by me, but I've got the authority and the instruction from the top down. That's your only Mike Brown comment in this chat.
Wow, there's nothing nice to say then.
No, that's it. That's no more Mike Brown comments, or we're gonna find you're gonna be out. Okay, so that's it. That's the only one. I'm laying that down. I let it go last week, and I probably let it go too long. Like, I was the fun teacher last week. Let the kid in the back of the room stir crap up, right? So
got a little heat from the principal. Right.
Of course, that takes us right to Andre Tonsel, who's asking Mike Brown questions.
Why does it always happen like this?
I know. Andre says, we in, we out. Do you think the play of quarterbacks are the real key to wide receiver recruiting?
Oh, that's 100% in. When your quarterback can get these wide receivers the ball in an offense, and you feel like you're racking up stats, you're showcasing your skills and abilities, and the NFL scouts are liking what they see. That's what really it comes down to. These kids want to know that they have a path from high school to the NFL if they play wide receiver at Notre Dame. And so if Riley Leonard starts slinging that ball around, they see how they fit into Mike Denbrock's offense. You got Deuce Knight coming in. Maybe CJ Carr is the quarterback. I think it just takes one good showing.
No, that's exactly right. Like we were talking about earlier this week, and we've talked quarterbacks and wide receivers obviously very extensively over the last couple of weeks, and wide receiver recruiting and everything else. And I said, you can't tell me that Sam Hartman had better talent in the wide receiver room at Wake Forest than what he had here at Notre Dame last year. Obviously, part of it was coaching and all that stuff. But I do feel like you get elevated quarterback play, it's supposed to make those guys better. And they've got elevated quarterback play. They should have elevated quarterback play because they're getting better quarterbacks. They've got this influx of wide receivers, but that's ultimately going to be it. It's going to be the play of the quarterback and the ability of these guys, whether it's this year or the next 2 or 3 years, to get these guys the ball and make these wide receivers look like playmakers with the kind of throws that they're able to make out there, because the quarterback ultimately does help make the wide receiver, So I think if they get that, it's going to go a long way, bottom line. But then, of course, Andre says, we in, we out. Mike Brown seems to be open and honest to recruits. Do you believe wide receiver recruits are probably in wait and see mode on how productive the wide receivers are on the field?
Yeah, I think they're in wait and see mode to see, like how much production comes out of the wide receiver room. And honestly, another part of this is I think they want to see the stability of the wide receiver room. We talked about this, I feel like last week. As a recruit, you're not really excited about, a first-time wide receiver coach that's coming in because of, basically the Chancey Stuckey situation last year, right? Like that's not a good optics look when the wide receiver coach leaves and then you see 3 or 4 guys transfer out with him. You know what I mean? And so like when you have that, we're introducing a new offensive coordinator, a new wide receiver room, a new quarterback, like all those things combined, I think that's an entirely wait and see type situation.
Yes to all of it. I think that I got caught reading a couple of comments over here. I've said that I think that Notre Dame is going to flip one of these guys. It's not going to be Tanu Hines because Notre Dame's not going to go pay the way USC did to get him. But I think that they will flip someone before signing day comes around, before the early signing day comes around in December. Of course, everyone wants it to be Derek Meadows. Like I said, I don't know if it'll be him, but I think that they will get someone. They will flip someone once they get eyes on this offense, once they get eyes and see that what Mike Denbrock's offense can do, like it produces viable wide receivers, like granted, LSU had great talent last year with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., and they're both in the NFL right now. But they also had a Heisman Trophy quarterback, and they also had Mike Denbrock as their offensive coordinator. So while Notre Dame might not have someone quite on the level of Neighbors and Thomas right now, again, you get better quarterback play. You have a better system that is more favorable to quarterbacks and wide receivers. And I think that that's going to go a long way, ultimately. And I do think that they will flip someone before the December signing period once they see what this offense can be, and that quarterbacks and wide receivers can both be very successful in this offense. So that's what I'll go with that. And now I'll get off the Mike Brown train as quickly as possible and see if we can steer in a different direction. Ballpeen Shillelagh, the wide receiver room has 3 guys over 600 yards this season. We in or we out on that?
I'm going to say we out. I think you'll get 2. 3 is a stretch. I think the third one, you'd be lucky if they broke 500. If Notre Dame has 3 guys over 600 yards, I'd consider that a very successful season for the wide receiver room. But, it's just we've kind of talked about this. There's an abundance of kind of, talent in the wide receiver room. There's only one ball that can go around to a lot of guys who have the potential to be good wide receivers. And so for that reason, I think it's hard to say, this guy's going to rack up consistent catches because I really don't think that that's what it's going to be about. It's just going to be about who's open and making the right play and the right read ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like when I look at last year, Neighbors and Thomas, Neighbors had nearly 1,600 yards. Thomas had nearly 1,200 yards. And those were their only 2 wide receivers who fit this category. Now, granted, when you have 2 guys well over 1,000 yards, that's pretty darn good. But nobody else even topped 600 yards in that LSU offense. So I can see 2 Notre Dame receivers do this. Maybe one ends up pushing 1,000, the other one 600 or better. What kind of made this curious is what somebody else was saying. Mitchell, like Mitchell Evans, maybe Mitchell Evans does. Had you said just 3 guys, I might have been in on that, but 3 wide receivers, I'm not, because I could see like a Mitchell Evans kind of push into that category, but I don't think that 3 wide receivers will. So I've got to be out on this one. Also, Ballpeen Shillelagh, Coach Al Golden manages to improve upon last year's defense and keeps teams under an average of 14 points per game in the regular season. We in or we out on that. Will the defense hold teams to 14 points a game or fewer?
Do you know what their what it was last year? Off the top of your head?
15.9 a game last year.
So what I really like about what helps this is you're playing Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Army, Navy, Stanford, Purdue. Like those aren't great offenses. So really you just got to handle your business to me and the Florida State, Texas A&M. And really it's like we could get into situations here where, you know, the second string and the third string defense could be responsible for giving up some of these points and kind of, you know, blundering the average. But, you know, for fun, I'm just going to say we end because I think that the schedule is easier this year. And I do think the defense is actually going to be better overall this season. Even though that there's a lot of guys kind of stepping into some new roles, I like the type of recruits and athleticism that's going to be, you know, on full display for the defense this season.
Only 3 teams in the nation did what is being asked here, and that is holding teams to under an average of 14 points a game. The national champion, Michigan Wolverines, did it. They led the nation, allowing only 10.4 points a game. Ohio State was next, 11.2 a game. Penn State was third, 13.4, and even Iowa, with that stingy defense, 14.7 points per game. Iowa allowed. So I really think this could happen, but just playing, you know, again, you know, like you said, like it's funny because like what do high school coaches do in those situations that you describe? You know, they'll keep the starters in longer than they need to a lot of times.
Yeah, because they don't want to. They
don't want to give up a shutout. They don't want
Yeah.
their, you know, the scoring average to get screwed up. Any of that stuff. You know, when you're blowing a team out in college, you're going to get guys on the depth chart who work hard during the week. You're going to get them out there, and you're going to get them a lot of reps. More times than not, even last year, you know, they still got the
Held
job
their own.
done. You know, against those different teams that they were blowing out when the second and third teams.
You know, it's funny.
got
You
out
make a
there.
good point. Defensive coordinators are more stingy about taking out their starters than the offense is.
Right. Exactly. For that reason, you know, it seems like anyway, like those defensive coaches, it's just like they get it in their heads. So I'm going to be out, but I can easily see like 14 and a half points a game is the number that they give up, which is still going to be really respectable. Okay. I see that the argument is blazing over here. So if we can redirect a little bit. Everyone doing have a good Thursday. Have fun. Come on now. Come on.
Everyone made fun of me for going to rooftop yoga on Tuesday, but guess who was calm and relaxed afterwards? This guy.
Yes. All right. Ted has now been put in timeout. So that's it for now. Anyway, we'll see if he comes back. The last time he was put in timeout, he didn't come back for a week. So there is no more Ted. So people don't have to worry about that any longer. All right, from DK, the linebackers will create more explosive plays on defense, but give up more explosive plays than last year. In or out on that?
This is a really good question, DK. I think you have to go kind of linebacker by linebacker. I think Jack Kaiser, steady Eddie. You know what I mean? He might not make the sexiest plays, but he's not going to give up the big plays. So I'm going to say he's kind of a wash at this point. Drake Bowen, first-time starter. I think naturally you're going to say he's due to make some sort of mistake, right? But I think that he is also due to make more explosive plays than his counterpart last season. So I'll be in on Drake Bowen in this narrative. And then Jalen Sneed or Jaden Osbury, they are definitely going to be making more explosive plays on defense this season. But I do believe that there is, again, kind of high risk, high reward on those kind of guys because they're going to be first-time starters again. And naturally, you just kind of make some mistakes as a first-time starter. You don't – it's all fun and games at practice and scrimmages, but for some reason the game just moves a little bit faster when you're in the game against another opponent in a full stadium with the crowd going. You know what I mean? It's just naturally going to happen. So as a linebacker room, I'm going to say we in on this.
See, I agree with what Sloppy Jew, like I'm buying some of what you're saying, like just because we are going to have guys who are pretty talented out there, they're going to create more explosive plays, but you might expect a mistake or two someplace along the way. But I just think that the defense overall is going to be so good, like the other parts of the defense can complement it, whether it's the safeties behind those linebackers or, the defensive line in front of them. Like there will be some mistakes made here and there, but I don't think that they are going, it's going to look a lot different than what we saw last year. And a lot of that is still going to go to the schedule that they're going to play. Because of the schedule that they are going to play, I think it lends itself to letting these guys, for the most, obviously Texas A&M is going to be a huge challenge on the road right away. What it looks like in that game, does it get a little bit scary? Maybe, like depending on what we see. But the majority of the schedule is just, it lends itself to letting these guys develop. And I don't think that we're going to see a ton of explosive plays given up. There might, there again could be mistakes, but I don't think it's going to be huge plays surrendered. Tommy said he originally accidentally posted his in Brian's thread. And of course, Brian, would have no response for this one because he says, okay, IPA better than Pilsner, which is ahead of dark beer, which is ahead of light beer. In or out on that?
I'm out on that because immediately IPA goes to the bottom of the list. And then dark beer or light beer is really determined by the time of year. Light beer in the summertime when it's more hot. And then I would say more of a Pilsner dark beer kind of in the winter time. But IPA is definitely last. If I ever wanted to just, go suck on a tree, I'd go outside and start gnawing on one.
This is the thing, and Father David gets it. IPA, not only overrated, but just does not taste that great. I don't need to sit and drink barley and hop. I don't need a cup to chew on barley and hops basically, in the IPA. The only IPA I can really tolerate is I like a New England IPA because it's a little more citrusy. It's a different kind of flavor than just a regular IPA. So if I were doing this, dark beer would be at the front, Pilsner would be next, light beer would be next, and then IPA would not be on my list.
It's not even getting an honorable mention.
No. And I like a nice, wheat beer, like a Hefeweizen, something like that in the summertime as well. Something a little more crisp and refreshing, but never to IPA. Never.
Father David, you can't be giving input on this.
He can drink. He's allowed to drink.
Oh.
Just because he's a father doesn't mean he can drink. We used to have a priest who would come over and have a beer or two with my mom and dad back in the day. So, I mean, they're allowed to partake as well. Clear Screen 25 says, since I like women's basketball questions, at least 4 Notre Dame players will average 15 points a game this season. I'm going to go all in on that. Like, you look at Hidalgo, you look at Sonia Citron. They both averaged better than 15 a game last season. Westbeld was just under 15 a game. You bring Olivia Miles back. She was flirting with 15 a game a couple of years ago. I think 4 is going to be the cutoff, at least 3, but just what this offense is going to be, especially with those point guards setting everybody up. I'll go in on 4, averaging 15 or better. What do you think?
I think that I need to get a final look at the roster. I think Hannah Hidalgo will do it.
Okay.
I think Olivia Miles will do it.
Okay.
I think one of Kate Koval or Leah Tu King would be my other. Maybe Maddie. No. Maddie Westbelt is my third.
Okay.
And then my X factor is either Koval or Leah Tao. But I'm gonna go Leah Tu. Leah Tu. But I'm gonna go under because I think that's a really hard for. I agree with you that I think 3, like if we're doing over under 3.5 is perfect.
Right.
I
think 3 is almost a lock. 4 is going to be pushing it, but
I think all the guards get it, but I don't think the big gets it. And I just think that's just because of, honestly, if there was just one of them, like if King never transferred or they never got Koval, I think like it just the one of them could do it. But I think because you have this dynamic of the young player and then the older player, and they're going to kind of be, working with each other. And King even said like kind of mentoring, Koval and stuff like that. I'm just going to say there's just going to be a little bit too much to go around, but I think the guards definitely get it done.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more depth in the front court this season when you add Liza Carlin and Leah Tu King and Kate Koval along with Maddie Westbelt. Like that could affect, her scoring. But I think you're right. The guards are going to be there. And then does that kind of knock the forwards down? Like does Maddie Westbelt's slip back or does it elevate after the season that she had last year and she just continues to grow on it? But that'll be a big question, I think.
DK thinks he's funny here.
What did he say? I think Leah Fowl gives up 15.
He's talking about Maris.
Oh, gotcha. He gave up 15 himself. Andrew was asking if Kaiser is replacing Maris' position. He is. Yes, he is at the will linebacker now. So, but that'll be kind of a question. Like Vince still isn't sold that Kaiser can play inside. I think that he'll be more than fine.
You want Maris back now?
Didn't say that.
I'm curious to see what Kaiser's role looks like because a lot of people got mad about what looked like Maris Leofau just running like a bull into the line of scrimmage, but like that was by design. Like that wasn't, he was being asked to do a specific thing. I'm curious if they asked Kaiser to do those same sort of stuff because I don't think Kaiser moves as well as what Leofau did. So I'm curious to see if that impacts the kind of role, or maybe if that means we start to see a rotation later on. Maybe Kaiser and whoever else start rotating in and out, and it's more of like a nickel type will linebacker, and then Kaiser's more of your like rundown linebacker.
That's what I was gonna say. That's what I would be leaning toward with what they have in that room, and like the fact that you do have KVA, who is really good in pass coverage, by the way, and like the depth that he can get on his drops and pass coverage and stuff like that. Like I would think that maybe Kaiser is more a 2-down back, and then you see Viliamu Asa, like 3rd down, nickel dime, and those kind of things. So that would be the direction that I'm leaning as we get ready for camp in less than 2 weeks now.
I remember when I was getting recruited, one of the schools literally called it a thumper linebacker.
Right.
And they're like, we want you to play a thumper. Yep. And I was like, what? What do you mean? What is that?
Come in and lay the wood.
Yeah, basically just fill the hole on the rundowns.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll get you out of there when we need someone, to athletically drop into coverage.
Right. All right. This one is from St. Irish 04. We in or we out on Emil Wagner. If he hits his ceiling, he has the talent to be a day 2 NFL draft pick.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that's, 6'6", 300 pounds. I mean, to me, the only way to answer this question is I don't think Notre Dame recruits players unless they think they have a ceiling to go on to the next level. So I think any player that comes to Notre Dame and fulfills their potential and, actually grows as a player while at Notre Dame, especially amongst the offensive line where Notre Dame has been, proven that they churn out offensive linemen. So
yes,
I just think that pretty much anyone that gets a scholarship to Notre Dame, if they work their butt off and they practice how they're supposed to and they commit to their craft and develop how they're supposed to, I think anyone has the chance to be a day 2 pick or beyond, and maybe even a first round pick. Who
Sure.
knows?
Right.
But I'm just going to say we end based on that. I just think that that's always got to be the mindset and intent when Notre Dame is recruiting people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to this question is if he hits his ceiling. And I completely agree with what you're saying there. The ceiling for virtually anyone who Notre Dame is recruiting is they think that like he could be a second round draft pick, basically, which is what day 2 is. The question for Emil Wagner is he going to get there? / how quickly is he going to get there? Because he's got more pressure now. He was running number 2 all spring long behind Tosh Baker, and now he's got Gilby Lambert coming in. So he's got to find it here pretty quickly if he's going to hit that ceiling at Notre Dame, because there's a ton of talent there, like adding the weight. He's done some of that. Now he's got to prove he can go out and do the job. So but if he hits his ceiling, of course he can end up being a day 2 second round draft pick. From Elmer Layden, if Notre Dame is guaranteed to win as long as you don't watch any of their games ever, either live or taped, and guaranteed to lose at least 2 games per season if you decide to watch any of their games, can you make it a full season and allow Notre Dame to be national champions? In or out on that?
This is such a double-edged sword.
Because you don't get to watch, but they win them all, or you watch and they lose at least 2 games.
I mean, basically what this question is asking, are you comfortable being the sacrificial lamb for the Notre Dame football season? And that's a tough ask as a fan, but I would sacrifice myself for the greater good of the rest of Notre Dame Nation. So if it took one person suffering and not being able to watch, then yeah, I would have to do it. But it would be really crappy because it's like, what could I even celebrate? Because it's not like I watched any of it.
Right. Like, how much is it going to mean to you? So, like, you can't even watch it taped. So does that mean you can't even watch highlights? Like, can you, I guess you got to watch.
This is a really good question.
Yeah.
It's hard. But again, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for the greater good.
Jesse is willing to make the sacrifice. I'm going to guess Vince would be willing to make the sacrifice. I can't do it. How am I supposed to do my job if I'm not watching these games?
Right? Yeah, you'd have nothing to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to, pick Maris Leofau apart or, Jack Kaiser and whoever else, and I'm not even watching the games out there. So I've got to be out.
And the people saying I'd go back and watch, or at the end of the season, can you watch? No, there's no watching. All you do is get the notification Notre Dame has won the national championship.
Yeah. Because again,
you're just box score hunting.
When you get to watch says, if Notre Dame guaranteed to win as long as you don't watch any of their games, live or taped. So taped means after the fact. So, I mean, that basically means you never get to watch any of it. Yeah. So you're in. You'll take the national championship, even though, again, like, what enjoyment are you really getting out of that if you never even get to watch it?
I can still brag to everyone.
Going to know the players?
I can still brag to everyone. No one will know that I didn't watch.
I mean, there's a lot of those kind of people anyway, right?
Right.
DK. Ooh. DK said he'd rather listen to the radio broadcast. Okay.
There we go. I think that's a good workaround in this instance.
It's not a bad solution. So you could at least listen to the radio broadcast and get an idea of what's going on. As long as the play-by-play
See,
guy
this is why I like
the proper
DK.
picture.
DK isn't the guy that tells you why you can't do stuff. He's trying to find solutions for why you can do stuff.
That's right. DK is everyone's cheerleader, pumping them up, giving you feel goods. He is the one who's doing what you're talking about, doing the compliment sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Until he's giving you a hard time at some other point. But all right, good questions as always tonight on We In, We Out. And again, the place to find and submit your questions is the new Champions Lounge at Irish Breakdown, the premium board. And I mean, the season's coming, so get there and subscribe and get ready for another season of Notre Dame football. We've got less than 2 weeks to go until fall training camp begins. Can you smell it in the air?
I can. I'll be in town that weekend too.
Will you? Oh, that's right. That's right. We've got the first 3 days of camp. We've got Marcus Freeman after the first practice, and then we've got other coaches and players after the next 2 practices. So my fingers will be busy transcribing, writing, and everything else. All right, Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it. That was a quick We In, We Out. I can't believe we're already into rapid fire.
I know. Fill in the blank. Sam Hartman getting drafted by the United Football League's Birmingham Stallions is blank.
Is a great backup plan. I mean, if you're Sam Hartman, you didn't have to do any work and you just got drafted by another team, right? So obviously the goal is, he signed with the Commanders after being an undrafted free agent. The Commanders, I mean, they were at Notre Dame's pro day. Cliff Kingsbury seems to like Sam Hartman. It seems like they want him to work into, a solid backup role. But to me, it's always nice to have a solid backup plan to fall back to, especially one that you didn't have to do anything for, right? Because if this thing doesn't pan out with the Commanders, basically the Stallions have his right if he wants to continue to play, football in the UFL. So I think it's great for Sam Hartman overall, but obviously the goal is to stay with the Commanders, right? Like that's what you're working towards. This is still a good fallback plan.
No, and I mean, it's a potential, like you said, fallback plan is the key. And Birmingham is actually, they've won the last 2 championships. They're the defending UFL champion. They only lost 1 game last year. Their quarterback this year was Adrian Martinez, the former Kansas State and Nebraska quarterback.
Yeah, there it is.
He threw for 15 touchdowns, completed 59% of his passes. They have Matt Corral, I guess, on the roster as well, the former Ole Miss. So who knows what will happen with Sam Hartman? What makes things interesting with Washington, a couple things. One, Cliff Kingsbury was at Notre Dame's pro day, and at the end of pro day, he was chatting up Sam Hartman for quite some time, and then they signed Sam Hartman right after the draft and gave him a really sizable guaranteed
They want
contract.
him there.
Right. Over $250,000 they gave him guaranteed, which was the highest end of all the undrafted free agents to sign. So the likelihood is Sam Hartman's not going anywhere. He's probably going to end up at least on the practice squad with Washington. Now, part of that,
isn't that such a good feeling though that Cliff Kingsbury sought you out, a guy that they knew that they probably weren't even going to draft, but they wanted to make sure that you're on their roster. And like we're talking about, I know Cliff Kingsbury has had his up and downs, in the NFL ranks, but we're still talking about one of the better QB minds, coaches, developers in the game. And so if I'm Sam Hartman, and this guy's taking time out of his day to come see me, talk to me, make sure that, I feel comfortable, I'm rewarded, like you talked about with like the signing bonus and all that stuff. Like, again, it's a great situation to be in. And if all that fails, the UFL is a nice, solid fallback. But I don't think it's going to come to that. I think they truly want to develop him on their roster for as long as they can keep him.
But this is also why I think that, especially for the longevity of the UFL, I think that it can be beneficial to both the UFL and the NFL if these UFL teams have developmental deals with NFL teams.
Like a two-way deal like the NBA, basically?
Well, not necessarily. They play in the spring, whereas the NFL is obviously playing in their training camp.
It's like off-season development. Right.
So, like, if you've got a third string quarterback who was on your practice squad, for example, or maybe he was an emergency quarterback when somebody got hurt and he got bumped up on the depth chart a little bit, but he's not getting any
So Ian
real
Book?
snaps. You send it, well, Ian Book, maybe it ends up being Sam Hartman, any of these kind of guys. You send them, they're still with whatever their NFL team is, but they play and get actual game reps in the UFL to give everybody more evaluation of these guys. I think it would be basically, like a minor league type situation. I think it would be great for everybody if you had that kind of developmental arrangement with the UFL. So Notre Dame is doing its New York Media Blitz today and tomorrow. Marcus Freeman and a few players are out there talking on various ESPN platforms. Marcus Freeman was on a couple of different ESPN shows this afternoon. Riley Leonard was on one as well. Here's the list of the players that Freeman took with him out east. Jordan Clark, Riley Leonard, Bo Collins, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, Mitchell Evans, Xavier Watts, Benjamin Morrison, and Steve Angeli. So first, what do you think of that list?
That list is like majority of it makes sense, but there's a couple where I'm just like scratching my head a little bit. And I think the overall vibe that I'm getting is that Marcus Freeman wanted to Marcus Freeman wanted to get guys. He picked guys based on, to me, it seems like I can't like class. Like he went with a lot of older guys, essentially.
Sure.
Guys, a lot of experience. But I'm just gonna say point blank, like I don't think that Steve Angeli should have went. I don't think Bo Collins should have went, and I don't think Jordan Clark should have went.
Jordan Clark is an interesting one because his dad, obviously,
Ryan Clark,
works for ESPN. So, like, how much that, and Marcus Freeman, you'll actually hear it here in a minute. He said on one of the shows today that he had just gotten done talking to Ryan Clark before he went on ESPN. The Angeli thing. This is the most curious.
It's like
one.
Why you're inviting people to ask you, why are you bringing two quarterbacks?
You're taking the backup quarterback, and that with all these questions about is CJ Carr going to end up being the backup and yada, yada, yada. The answer is no, because they're not taking Steve Angeli out there.
That's what I mean.
They're not taking Steve Angeli out there if they don't think that he is that guy.
Well, I think that's the fun part about these lists is it gives you early insight or indication about how the coaching staff feels about certain players.
Yep.
They clearly trust Ryan Clark. Jordan Clark. They clearly trust Steve Angeli, even though he's, going to be the backup behind Riley Leonard. And they trust Bo Collins, even though he's never played a snap at Notre Dame. So it's
never even officially practiced at Notre Dame.
Right. And so to me, it shows again how they feel about certain players, essentially, or their confidence in certain players. But again, I can live with Bo Collins, but Jordan Clark and Steve Angeli are not on my list to New York.
As Salty says, he thinks that he took people who will be going into the draft this year. That ain't Steve Angeli. That's not why he took Steve Angeli. It's like here's a little boost of confidence. Like, here's your compliment sandwich, Steve Angeli. We're taking you to New York with the crew of all these different veterans. We think a lot of you. That's what it seems like.
A lot of people are talking about it's good business to help out your backup quarterback that might end up transferring. To me, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to bring him on a national stage and open up the conversations. Well, is Riley Leonard really going to be healthy this season? Well, is Steve Angeli really closer to Riley Leonard on the depth chart than what we're giving him credit for? Like, you're just asking, especially at a national level, ESPN, New York, like you're asking for people to start asking you questions, essentially.
Seems odd. DK says just
it's never done before. I guarantee no other team is taking two quarterbacks with them.
No. You don't like, none of these teams at SEC media days sent the backup quarterback to go to media days to answer questions there. You send your starting quarterback. I think I saw something like 12 quarterbacks or something like that from different teams went to SEC media days. I'm honestly surprised that it's not more, but maybe those other teams have quarterback battles going on in fall camp or whatever.
That's the word I was looking for, upperclassmen. It felt upperclassmen dominant, heavy.
Yeah. And I guess Angeli falls into that category since he's going to be a junior.
You know, I think he's an upperclassman. I think Marcus Freeman respects him as a guy who works hard, a leader on the team. Maybe if he's not a full-time starter, all of those things. But again, I'm just not sacrificing the optics of that by bringing both of my quarterbacks. I'm just not.
Yep. I agree. I think it was a very interesting choice.
It's a choice for sure.
I don't mind Jordan Clark as much because, again, like the guy, he is Ryan Clark's son, but he's also got, we got to talk to him during the spring, big personality, very well spoken, all those different kind of things. Bo Collins kind of seems to fall into that as well. And even though neither one of those guys have been with this team before, well, I mean, neither had Riley Leonard, and he went out there, and Sam Hartman went out there last year. But it's a long list of guys who they took out there. So who on this list do you think is ultimately going to be named a captain? Because we got a lot of veterans out there, and not all of them are going to be captains.
Riley Leonard will be a captain. Riley, it's going to be between Riley Mills and Howard Cross.
See, I think they're both really viable.
I know, but I think you're only going to pick one of them.
Yeah, because they're both defensive linemen. Right.
I think they're going to go with Riley Mills because of he's been at Notre Dame from start to finish. Howard Cross transferred in, if I'm not wrong.
No, you're wrong about that.
I'm wrong about that? Okay.
I think you're thinking R.J. Oben.
Throw that out the window. I'm going Howard Cross.
R.J. Oben and Howard Cross's dads played together with the Giants. Maybe that's the connection you were
making. Maybe. I'm going to go Riley Leonard, Howard Cross, Xavier Watts, and Mitchell Evans. But what's tough about Mitchell Evans is I think he's ultimately going to represent a young offensive line, and I think you usually have an offensive lineman on there, but I think that's going to be Mitchell Evans this season. So those are my
So you're
my
saying
four off the list.
Instead of an offensive lineman, you're going to have the tight end.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there's just so much inexperience.
That's
on
true,
the
because none of the offensive linemen, I don't think any of the offensive linemen are going to be named captains. I think the captains are going to come from this group. I mean, that's why you take, these guys to a place like that. So I agree. I think that Leonard will be one. I mean, it's almost flip a coin between Cross and Mills.
That's the toughest one to me.
I know. One of those guys will. You said Mills, so I'll say Cross just to be different. Evans makes sense. Watts makes sense. Did I already say Leonard?
Yes.
I mean, I think Morrison makes a lot of sense, really.
Well, I just don't think you're going to have more than one. I think you have like a secondary player, a defensive line player, a linebacker player, and then same thing on offense. You have like an offensive lineman, a quarterback, and then like a skill position guy. I just don't think that you're going to have Watts and Benjamin Morrison. And so even though I think Watts coming off that big season, player of the year, that sort of stuff, even though Morrison is more talented, I still think Watts is going to get it just out of, being more of an upperclassman experience, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. USMA 87 says Kaiser. I mean, I think he's another.
He's going to be the linebacker captain for sure.
Yeah. But he didn't.
I nailed him last year. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. By the way, you know what's coming up next week? Speaking of things that you nailed.
Are we doing our breakouts again?
Breakout predictions. Breakout predictions next week. Okay, so ESPN has Riley Leonard as Notre Dame's X factor for the season. Here's what they say. What exactly do the Irish have in Leonard? Over 2 seasons at Duke, Leonard looked like a potential first-round NFL pick at times, but an injury ended his 23 season early, kept him out of spring ball in South Bend. Leonard's overall numbers from 23 don't exactly scream superstardom. 57% completions, 6.7 yards per throw, 3 touchdown passes, 3 picks. Obviously, his upside far exceeds those numbers, but the Irish have invested a lot in luring him from Duke, and it's fair to wonder whether even a repeat of fellow ACC transfer Sam Hartman's performance from 23 would be enough to lift Notre Dame's offense to something approaching playoff caliber. So that is from ESPN on Riley Leonard. Are you buying or selling that, Jess?
Yeah, I'm buying full blown. Riley Leonard is the entire X factor on this offense. If they want to go to the next level, if they want to win games in the playoff and make a make a run at the national championship, that has to be on the back of Riley Leonard's performance. I mean, that's just point blank. Look at all the good teams over the years in the playoffs and national, like they have good quarterback play, right? Like that's what it comes down to. I guess the part that I'm not really selling is they invested a lot to lure him from Duke. It's not like they they had to give up. It's not like the NFL where you had to give up players or like a trade or anything like that. Like he made the decision as a grad transfer to come over to Notre Dame. So I don't know I guess I'm curious about what they've invested in him to lure him from Duke. And I think that the last part, it's fair to wonder whether even a repeat of fellow ACC transfer Sam Hartman's performance from 2023 would be enough to lift Notre Dame's offense to something approaching playoff caliber. I mean, I'm going to say last year, Sam Hartman's performance in the big games is really what held them back ultimately, right? And I think that was in combination with stuff that Jared Parker was doing at offensive coordinator. But I think I don't think he's going to repeat what Sam Hartman did. I think he's going to be better than what Sam Hartman did last season, and that's ultimately what's going to drive Notre Dame to be more successful this season. So I'm buying most of what was said, but those last couple of things I'd be a little bit sell on.
See, I'm selling a lot of it, and where I start with is the questioning of the numbers that he had last year. This part right here. Leonard's overall numbers from 2023 don't exactly scream superstardom. 57.6% completions, 6.7 yards a throw, 3 touchdown passes, 3 picks. Well, guess what? He was healthy until he played Notre Dame. And in the 4 games before he played Notre Dame, he completed 76% of his passes, and he ran for over 8 yards per attempt in the 4 games before the injury. It was really, now, did he have a game where he didn't hit 60%? Yeah, it was Clemson. But guess what he did?
He ran all over him.
He ran all over him, and he led Duke to a win over Clemson. When was the last time Duke beat Clemson before last year?
I don't care about stats. Just give me wins.
Long time. And that's my point. I don't think it's fair to judge Riley Leonard on those stats because almost half of the games that he played in were played with an injury. Like he tried to come back, and that's when those numbers went down, was because obviously he wasn't able to run as much, and he didn't throw nearly as accurately after the injury that he suffered to that ankle, to the ankle. Now, the other part that I would say is, it's fair to wonder whether even a repeat of fellow ACC transfer Sam Hartman's performance would be enough to lift Notre Dame's offense to something approaching playoff caliber. Again, you're going to have a completely different offensive coordinator in here running the show. And now, do we expect
different wide receiver room?
Yeah, largely different wide receiver room, the whole thing. So I think it's an apples to oranges comparison if you're even going to try to compare, Sam Hartman's last year to Riley Leonard this year, just on the fact that you're going to have a completely different system, completely different personnel. And then you throw in the fact that they're 2 different kinds of quarterbacks, because Riley Leonard is a guy who, if all systems are firing well, he's gonna run for at least 700 yards this season, on top of what he's gonna do throwing the football. So that's where I've got to be out. Is it fair, to wonder? Okay, yeah, but you're a lot of this argument is based on a quarterback who was injured last season. Now, is it fair to wonder whether or not he can come back from the injury? Of course, because we're all wondering that. That's, basically our biggest concern. But is it, are all these other most of the comparisons to me are too much apples to oranges to try to apply that to Riley Leonard because of all the different other factors that you have around it.
Yeah, and I think you did a better job of articulating kind of my uneasiness with that last sentence about, and it's fair to wonder whether even a repeat of fellow ACC transfer, you know, Sam Hartman's performance would be enough to lift Notre Dame. It's just, I think that I think the expectations are ultimately different from, you know, everything that transpired after Sam Hartman got here and you know, the situation, the offensive coordinator and those sort of things. I think they kind of had to find maybe like a realistic grounds of what they wanted to accomplish, you know, as an offense, considering everything that was kind of going on around them, you know, what their identity was going to be, and knowing that they had Audric Estime, you know, lining up behind them. I think that played a large role in it. But Riley Leonard is going to take on more of that Audric Estime role this season because of his ability to run the ball, right? And so you combine that with a completely different offensive coordinator, probably a different scheme that's going to involve, you know, far more RPO type reads. It's just, it's like you said, it's an apples to oranges comparison. But I still do think at the end of the day, Riley Leonard's performance in the big games is ultimately what's going to be the X factor for Notre Dame making a serious run this season.
For sure. I mean, that's, you know, again, like if you boil everything down to why Riley Leonard is here, that's it, because they had to get better.
They had to get better in the Ohio State game. They had to get better, you know, in the Louisville game when things aren't going right, or maybe not, you know, to script or game plan. That's where Riley Leonard comes in, because you can't game plan for Riley Leonard's feet. You can't game plan for all the wrinkles that can come off of Riley Leonard. With Sam Hartman, you shut down his arm, you've shut down a majority of what he can do with the football.
Yep, exactly. Good point that a couple people made about Steve Angeli that I wasn't thinking about. Now, he is from New Jersey, so, you know, like you go back and you're in that, you know, New York, New Jersey. Okay. You know, I'm looking to see. I know that there are at least a couple other players on the roster who are from New York and New Jersey. Are they taking Rhino Monteforte, the long snapper?
Now you're just being ridiculous.
I mean, Howard Cross is as well. You know, Howard Cross.
Just simply simply say there's no excuse for why you should bring a second quarterback with you.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how does Riley Leonard feel about that?
It's not a high school media day.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, he's from New Jersey, so let's take him back. So I can't go in on that. Okay, so Marcus Freeman spent a little time today on ESPN. First, he was on Sports Center this afternoon. Then he went on College Football Live a little bit later. And Hannah Storm, who is a Notre Dame alum, was the one who did the interview on Sports Center. It covered some topics like Riley Leonard and, you know, the expanded playoff and all these different things. Then at the end, they did something called the 2-minute drill, because, as she said, college football is going to have the 2-minute warning this year. So they put Marcus Freeman through the 2-minute drill, kind of throwing, you know, some topics at him. So I'll let you take a listen right now to how that 2-minute drill went.
What else new in college football this year is the 2-minute warning. So we want to do a 2-minute drill with you, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Let's start the clock. Okay, this is big on TikTok right now. How many unread text messages do you have?
1.
Wow. From who?
I'm big on, it's something it's a text I have to reply to, and I didn't have a chance to, so I kept it on unread. But I'm big on listening. I don't want my text message to fill up. I want to answer them right away.
Okay, who's the most famous person on your contact list?
Oh man, who's the most famous?
Just
person?
one, quick.
Ryan Clark. I just was with him.
Okay, Ryan Clark. That's a good one. Okay, his son Jordan plays for you. Give me 3 words to describe his son.
Smart, aggressive, playmaker.
All right, just like dear old dad. You were recently on a podcast. You said back in college, Cam Hayward chest bumped you, and it was very painful. Did you actually lose teeth, and how many?
I lost 2 teeth, my front 2.
Oh my God. Okay. The Leprechaun mascot does push-ups after every touchdown. How many push-ups can you do?
70.
70?
Good
I'm
Lord.
gonna say that right now.
Okay, that's really.
You didn't say full extension, you know.
Really full extension. Okay. There is a new edition of EA Sports College Football. What overall rating would you have given yourself as a college football player?
Not great. I'm high 80s, maybe mid 80s. I wasn't a great football player.
Okay, wait. By the way, you were rated in 96. What rating would you give your team?
Really high. Now they got to live up to that expectation. But if that rating is based on potential, it's going to be high. Now that we got to go and do it.
Okay, a familiar face is returning to do play-by-play for your games this season. How do you feel about Dan Hicks calling games this season?
I tell you what, he is an ultimate professional. But the thing I respect about him most is that he has a great wife, and he's going to make this program better.
Which famous female alum would you like to have on the sideline this year? Last question.
The one I'm talking to.
Yay! Bing, bing, bing. Perfect. Marcus, you're the best. I sincerely, and you know from my heart, wish you all of the best this season, and may the luck of the Irish be with you. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, Hannah. This was a blast.
Hannah Storm, of course, a Notre Dame alumna herself, and that's, kind of, and her husband, who she mentioned, Dan Hicks, is going to be the play-by-play guy on NBC TV this season. I didn't realize that the unread text is another one of these TikTok things that's going around now, Jess. How many unread text messages do you have?
Right now?
Yes.
Let me tell you. Probably because we're doing a show, I have 14 unread text messages.
14? Man.
Before the show, I had one unread text message. But I'm like Marcus Freeman. I don't open a message unless I intend to respond, because I will open it, and if I don't respond, I'll forget about it. But when I mark it as unread, or if I don't open it, then I always have that reminder I need to respond.
Yeah. Sloppy Joe, yes, Dan Hicks is married to Hannah Storm. That's kind of why she threw that in there on him. Jordan Clark, smart, aggressive, playmaker. I like those adjectives. I'll take them. I had never heard that about his teeth and the chest bump.
You wouldn't know.
Hayward. Man, I didn't realize those were fake teeth. No wonder he's got such good looking teeth.
That's such a dumb college football moment. You know what I mean? Just chest bumping. He probably got a helmet right to his front teeth. Like blood was gushing out everywhere. Like that had to be not fun.
Man.
The 70 push-ups, like, God, he's just, I knew he was fit. But...
How many do you think you could do right? How many could you do in your prime? How many do you think you could do right now?
So this is funny because my freshman year of high school, I had an English teacher, and he worked out. He was a fit guy for how old he was.
I remember this guy.
But he would always challenge football players to push-up contests in the middle of the classroom. In my heyday, I could get up between about 50 and 60, I believe. And that's full extension. Marcus Freeman said not full extension. I could get over 50 full extension. And then there was another guy that I played baseball with, Sam Hosinski, in high school. Him and I would always duke out push-up battles at practice and stuff like that. And so that, again, we could get over 50, but that was a while ago. Right now, I think I would put myself – I could clear 20. 30 would probably be pushing it.
Yeah. In my prime, when I used to have to do like Army PT tests, because we got timed, how many sit-ups and push-ups can you do each in 2 minutes? I could get 100 push-ups in 2 minutes. And that was, they had to be full extension.
You had to touch the fist, right?
And you had someone put the fist on the ground, and you had to touch the fist every time. So I could get 100 in 2 minutes back in the day. I could probably... I'm going to go 35, 40 right now. Like not in 2 minutes, but like consecutive, with minimal breaks before, I feel like falling over. So 70 would be legit. 70 would be legit. He might even be.
Well, it's not only a strength thing, it's a stamina thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing about push-ups, because like they're even so different than, like bench press and stuff like that. Because you're absolutely right. It's a different kind of stamina, really, like almost a different kind of muscle that you're pushing there. All right, so good stuff. And again, we've got some of the stuff up, or we should have some of the stuff up from Marcus Freeman's Sports Center and College Football Live appearances on irishbreakdown.com here in a little bit. All right, I've got some more audio. This is Chris Mad Dog Russo and Paul Feinbaum.
Oh, my gosh.
Having a crazy little exchange on ESPN this week about whether or not Lincoln Riley has been a success in his 2 years at USC. So Russo says Riley has been successful since Caleb Williams won the Heisman 2 years ago. Here's the clip. Chris Mad Dog Russo and Paul Feinbaum going at it.
Over a good program. They were terrible. USC what was their record before he got there the year before? Did he lose 5 games? 4 games?
But Doggy, in the transfer, I mean, he brought a bunch of players. He brought the best player in the country with him.
And won a Heisman Trophy with him.
Didn't get much out of him.
And he won a Heisman Trophy! And a place where they win Heisman with Marcus Allen and Charles White
what did it,
and Simpson.
How many trophies did how many
Carson Palmer.
trophies did he hold up?
Well, hold on now. You talk about Heisman Trophy at USC, that means everything. Carson Palmer, Leonard, Reggie Bush, Simpson. They love Heisman trophies. And he brought a Heisman Trophy there. That counts. That counts.
I mean, you're
Jeez,
using
they love
O.J.
Heisman trophies at
Simpson as a
USC.
reason why USC is good? Come on.
It's USC. They've been around since 1910. New Rockney, USC. That's why. It's a much better program than Oklahoma. I'm surprised at you. Don't talk about Vanderbilt football.
Tommy wants to know why he's yelling. He's yelling because he's
Mad Dog Russo. There's a reason why him and Stephen A do a show together, because they just yell at each other.
That's right. So first, what do you think of that little exchange that Russo and Feinbaum had there?
I enjoyed it as a consumer. I don't like when they just start yelling at each other.
I know it's the
typical argument.
Ultimately,
that's right. People in arguments think if they start talking louder and screaming things that ultimately is what's going to make them right.
Right.
That's my least favorite type of sports discussion. So like when he started yelling,
and that is the stereotypical like why people don't like those kind of shows. Because think about Stephen A. Smith and Russo going at it like that. But go ahead.
Going back to, what the topic at hand.
Hold off on that. Because the one thing that I will say, even though, like you said, Russo going overboard, going at Feinbaum, yelling at him. I mean, it's classic Chris Russo. But how many times does Feinbaum have somebody push back on it?
That's what you got to respect is he's always the guy that's like, feels like his word is the gospel type of situation.
Exactly. And so I did think it was at least very, I thought it was pretty funny just to see like Paul Feinbaum's face and have somebody coming at him like that, like a mad dog.
I think he was a little scared, like he looked like a scared dog when Russo started getting loud with him.
It's like for one of the few times he didn't know what to say, but at the same time, like when let me just put it this way. Here was my favorite part.
They love Heisman trophies at USC.
Reason why USC is good? Come on.
It's USC. They've been around since 1910. New Rockney, USC. That's why. It's a much better program than Oklahoma. I'm surprised at you.
Newt Rockney. Now Newt Rockney was at USC, I guess, according to Russo, who, by the way, had a daughter who went to Notre Dame just a few years ago. He had a daughter going to Notre Dame, and now he's putting Newt Rockney at USC. So that was obviously that, and that's the other thing about Mad Dog is he just starts throwing out names at some point in most of his arguments.
He just starts shooting from the hip, baby.
That's right. So the other half of this is the actual topic that they were debating. Are you buying or selling what Russo is saying? Like, do you think that Lincoln Riley has been a success at USC?
I'm buying it because they did win a Heisman and they've had double-digit wins, or he had double-digit wins in his first season. And before that, they hadn't had double-digit wins since the 2017 season. And for USC, I think the standards are there that if you're not double digits, you should at least be pushing or knocking on the door of double digits. And after 2017, they went 5-7, 8-5, 5-1 in the COVID year, and then 4-8 in Clay Helton's last year. So I do believe he has been a success, but I don't believe the rationale of, well, Caleb Williams won a Heisman and that's the only reason why they've been successful. I think there's more to it than that. And I think if that's the basis of your argument, I think you should have got more out of your team since you did have Caleb Williams, the best quarterback in college football.
I agree with that. They did win the Pac-12 in Riley's first year, and they did go to the Cotton Bowl. They did win 11 games. And I mean, look, if you're a Notre Dame fan and you're judging this, and if you think that Marcus Freeman has been successful in his first 2 years, you have to think that Lincoln Riley has been successful in his first 2 years because they've got the exact same record. They're both 19-8. They're their first 2 years at their schools. Now, they've gone about it a different way. And like to your last point there, Jesse, about did they get enough out of Caleb Williams? He obviously did win the Heisman Trophy in his first season. His second season got vastly overshadowed, though, with the fact that they averaged almost 42 points per game. Their USC's offense did. They ranked third in the nation in scoring, but the defense was 118th, giving up over 34 points a game. I mean, that's ultimately what Lincoln Riley has to get fixed is that defense, and that's why he hired a new defensive coordinator.
Sorry, someone was knocking on the door, and my house went absolutely nuts.
Yes,
so.
apparently so.
But I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You know, Lincoln Riley can't control – he's an offensive guy, and he can't control, for lack of better terms, that his defense was poop, the last 2 seasons, right? If they even have a halfway mediocre defense, I think they're a lot better. And you can make the argument, if Caleb Williams stays healthy in that first year, things might have been a little bit different in those Utah games. So, I think there's some things factoring into it, but with the short sample that we've had, 11-win season, an Heisman winner, last season obviously was a little bit of a letdown with the 8-5 season. But again, I think with like Marcus Freeman, this is year 3 for Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams is gone now. You don't have the great, the best quarterback in the portal, the Heisman quarterback coming with you. I truly believe, we talk about all of the, this being a year of kind of judgment for Marcus Freeman. I think that holds true for Lincoln Riley. It's that coveted third year. This is kind of officially your type of players that you're recruiting, bringing in through the transfer portal. And again, you don't have Caleb Williams to fall back on anymore. So I think this is going to be a true test of where Lincoln Riley is as a head coach with USC.
Yeah. Okay. So clarification, DK is correct. Utah won in the Pac-12 championship game. USC won the regular season.
Yes.
Pac-12. That's, I guess, kind of what I was referring to. Sometimes I don't think about the conference championship game since we cover a team that never has to play in a conference championship game. But it's, again, point made and completely right on that. And as Andrew says, he was a conference championship game away from making the playoff in his.
And again, like you can,
and they only lost by 4 points in that game. So
and Caleb Williams' hamstring wasn't 100%.
Yeah, that's right. He was injured in that game. That's absolutely right. So I think he's been successful, a complete success. No, because they did fall back and the defense was putrid last year. And, DK.
I think Feinbaum was rating him off of this past season and not really taking in both seasons. So in terms of this argument, I lean more towards Russo. But again, it's not strictly because Caleb Williams won a Heisman. I think there's other things that factor into that argument.
Yeah. I think Feinbaum can fall to recency bias quite a bit in some of his arguments, like for as rational as he sort of makes himself out to be. I think he can fall into that trap sometimes of just straight out recency bias. So fill in the blank. Caitlin Clark setting the WNBA single game record with 19 assists and also scoring or assisting on 66 total points, which is also another new record. And the Fever's loss to Dallas last night is blank.
It's epic. I mean, again, Caitlin Clark is continuing to do stuff or set records or redefine kind of these milestones. And she's only, in her first season into the WNBA. So I think it's completely epic. And I think it's kind of funny that it felt kind of intentional to me. You know what I mean? It felt like she kind of had a point to prove.
We're on national TV going into the All-Star break. A lot of eyes.
And then it kind of just shows, you know, my game isn't all about scoring. I can dish that thing out. I can get others involved, or I can put up 15 shots a game. You just let me know, and well, I'll do what's ever best for the team. So I think it's epic because of people continue to doubt Caitlin Clark, but I think she continues to kind of come back or clap back at everyone and give them something else new that they didn't know was a part of her arsenal, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, obviously she was just a political football, you know, when she came into the league, just with all the conversation going around. And, you know, like virtually none of the conversation was actually about how she played. It was about all these other things, and everyone had an agenda, and everyone's trying to make a point and all this different stuff. Now it has died down, and it's actually got to the point where she's just playing basketball. And guess what? She's playing really, really well. It's like her or Angel Reese are going to be the rookie of the year. But she is the fastest WNBA player since Sue Bird to get to over 400 points and 200 assists in the same season, since Sue Bird, and I think it was 2003, so it's been over 2 decades, and the second fastest player ever behind Tisha Penicheiro, who was, I think, one of the original WNBA players, or, you know, like in the first few years of the league. So, you know, it's back to she's in rarefied air. And oh, by the way, it's actually because she played basketball, even though that's getting a lot less conversation these days. But they're 11-15. They're the third best team in the East. They're 2 wins away from matching their win total from a season ago. Her rookie of the year odds went from minus 1,000 to minus 2,000 overnight. So it's just, you know, I don't know. You know, they've basically played the toughest schedule in the league. And it's basically been for TV purposes. So it's pretty great to kind of, you know, 19 assists. There's nothing to sneeze at all. Rike Gumbawale, 24 points last night, by the way, in the Dallas win. So that was nice too. And as those two non-Olympians are going to face off against the Olympians in the All-Star game this weekend. Tommy's saying she's scared to do the 3-point contest. Well, remember, she did that 3-point contest with Steph Curry back in the men's All-Star break?
I want to say that was that her?
Oh, that wasn't her. That was Sabrina.
Was it Sabrina?
That was, yeah.
That's what I thought it was.
That's right. Because she would have still been in college at that point. Never mind.
I digress.
Yes.
I forgot when we were still on Feinbaum, I had something else to add that was really funny.
Go ahead. Throw it in there.
So I saw this clip today on X, and it was from the SEC Media Day throughout this week. And Lane Kiffin.
Save it. I've got that.
You got
that queued up tomorrow. That's coming tomorrow. Yes.
He snuck in that jab.
Yes. There was only so much we could fit into today with all this other Marcus Freeman stuff going on. We've got that queued up for tomorrow's show.
I'm glad you saw that. That was really funny to me.
I saw it literally right before the show was getting ready to start. I'm like, I don't have time to get this ready at this point. So, yes, we will do that for sure. So that'll be fun as well. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Appreciate all your questions from the we in, we out portion of the show earlier tonight. Good stuff as always. And we will wrap up the show, or wrap up the week tomorrow. The Friday shows are winding down, by the way, because once training camp starts, the Friday shows go away because we're now getting ready for the season, and we'll have pregame shows and all that kind of stuff once the season gets going. So your Friday shows, I think we've only got basically 2 more to go this week, maybe next week. Yeah, this weekend, next week. There won't be the week after that because camp will be underway at that point. All right. We will wrap it up with that. Again, please hit the like button before you leave and help out the channel, the show, and all that good stuff. Don't forget, if you missed it, we've got all kinds of Notre Dame women's basketball interviews that we've done this summer. The latest was Leah Tu King. Had her the other day. Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, Liza Carlin, the other grad transfer. You can find them either on the YouTube channel or on the podcast platforms that you listen on as well. And I've got a football guest coming up next week, by the way. So we got that to look forward to. Football guest coming up on next week's show. hit the like button, and we will talk to you mañana on IB Nation Sports Talk.